The Haunted Boy of Chevy Chase, the real exorcist case. A 14-year-old boy spoke in unknown languages and attacked priests during 30 exorcism sessions that changed history forever. Cottage City, Maryland sits quiet in the winter of 1949, a modest suburb where working families raised their children in post-war normalcy. Inside one unremarkable home, something moves in the walls. The family hears it first at night, scratching sounds that travel behind the plaster, methodical and persistent, as if something with claws traces the interior skeleton of their house. They check for rodents. They find nothing. The scratching continues. The family consists of a Lutheran couple and their 14-year-old son, known to history only as Roland Doe, a pseudonym assigned to protect the identity of a boy who becomes the center of one of the most documented cases of demonic possession in American history. Roland is an ordinary teenager, unremarkable in school, quiet at home, interested in the things that interest boys his age. But in the weeks before the scratching begins, something changes in his life. His Aunt Harriet passes away. Aunt Harriet had been more than family to Roland. She had been a spiritual guide of sorts, a woman interested in spiritualism and the occult practices that experienced a revival in mid-century America. She had introduced Roland to the Ouija board, teaching him that the dead could communicate through the planchette if one only knew how to listen. After her passing, Roland grieves in the way his aunt had taught him. He continues to use the board, alone now, calling out to Harriet in the empty rooms of his home, asking if she can hear him, asking if she is still there. The scratching in the walls begins shortly after. Then the objects start to move. A picture frame slides across a table with no one near it. A chair tips backward when Roland sits in it, as if pulled by unseen hands. His parents witness these events directly. They are not stories told by a child, but phenomena observed by adults in full daylight. They contact their Lutheran minister, who visits the home and witnesses the disturbances himself. He has no explanation. He suggests psychiatric evaluation. The psychiatrist finds nothing clinically wrong with Roland. The boy displays no symptoms of psychosis or neurological disorder. But the phenomena escalate regardless of medical opinion. Roland's bed begins to shake at night, not trembling but violently lurching, the frame lifting from the floor and slamming down with force that leaves marks in the wood. Roland cannot sleep. His parents take turns watching him, holding him, trying to calm him. Nothing helps. Then the words appear. Scratches form on Roland's skin, not random marks but legible letters, words carved into his flesh by nothing anyone can see. The marks appear in real time, witnessed by his parents, forming slowly as if traced by an invisible fingernail. The words are obscene. They are threatening. They reference things Roland could not know. The family, desperate now, turns to the Catholic Church. Father Edward Hughes agrees to meet with the boy. What Father Hughes witnesses convinces him that Roland Doe requires more than counseling or prayer. He requires exorcism. The Catholic Church does not perform exorcism lightly. The ritual is reserved for cases where every other explanation has been exhausted, where medical and psychological intervention has failed, where the signs point unambiguously to something beyond natural explanation. The Church requires documentation, witness testimony, and approval from the highest levels of ecclesiastical authority. In the case of Roland Doe, that approval comes through. Father Hughes begins the process. During the initial attempt, something attacks Father Hughes. A spring from Roland's mattress, which had been intact moments before, comes loose and slashes the priest's arm, requiring stitches. Father Hughes withdraws from the case. The family, terrified and now convinced their home is the source of the problem, makes a desperate decision. They relocate to St. Louis, Missouri, where relatives offer them shelter and where they hope distance from Cottage City might break whatever has attached itself to their son. The relocation changes nothing. In St. Louis, the phenomena intensify. The Catholic Church assigns Father William Bowden, a Jesuit priest with experience in difficult spiritual cases, to take over the exorcism. Father Walter Halloran, a younger priest, assists him. What follows is documented in handwritten diaries, kept by the Jesuits, diaries that survive in institutional archives, and that provide the factual foundation for everything that comes after. Over the course of nearly 2 months, Father Bowden and Father Halloran conduct 30 separate exorcism sessions. The rituals take place in multiple locations: in the family home, in a hospital room, in a monastery where Roland can be monitored constantly. Each session follows the Roman ritual of exorcism: prayers spoken in Latin, holy water applied, relics of saints brought near the boy. Each session is witnessed by multiple individuals, family members, medical staff, other clergy. Each session is documented immediately afterward in writing. The phenomena witnessed during these sessions defy conventional explanation. Roland's voice changes, not in the way a person might alter their tone, but fundamentally becoming guttural and layered, as if multiple voices speak through a single throat. He speaks in Latin, delivering complex theological arguments and obscene parodies of scripture in a language he has never studied. His body contorts in ways that suggest impossible flexibility. He vomits repeatedly, spitting at the priests with accuracy that seems guided. He knows things he should not know, the names of clergy he has never met, personal details of their lives, sins they have confessed in private. The physical attacks escalate. Roland breaks Father Halloran's nose during one session, striking with force that requires multiple men to restrain him. He urinates on the priest with what witnesses describe as unnatural velocity and volume. Objects in the room move when Roland looks at them, not sliding but flying, crossing distances too quickly to be thrown. A school desk, in a classroom full of students and a teacher, levitates in Roland's presence before the exorcism begins in earnest, an event witnessed by secular observers with no connection to the church. Father Halloran, decades later, speaks publicly about what he witnessed. Unlike many involved in sensitive church cases, he chooses transparency over silence. He confirms the levitation. He confirms the words appearing on skin. He confirms the voice changes and the knowledge of hidden things. He describes holding Roland down during sessions, feeling the boy's body temperature fluctuate wildly, seeing the hatred in eyes that no longer seem to belong to a child. Father Halloran becomes the direct witness whose testimony lends credibility to a case that might otherwise be dismissed as religious hysteria. Ed and Lorraine Warren, though not personally present during the 1949 events, study the Roland Doe case extensively in the years that follow. By the time they establish themselves as demonologists in the 1950s and 1960s, the Jesuit diaries from the case are known within clerical circles, and Father Halloran's willingness to discuss his experiences provides them with primary source testimony. Ed Warren interviews Father Halloran directly, obtaining first-hand clerical confirmation of the phenomena. The Warrens reference the Roland Doe case in their lectures as the preeminent American example of documented demonic possession, a case involving institutional oversight, medical professionals, multiple witnesses, written records kept in real time, and a survivor who lives afterward without recurrence. The Warrens cite the case as proof that possession is not a relic of medieval superstition, but a documented 20th century reality. They point to the institutional involvement as critical. This is not a case dependent on a single witness or a family's testimony, but an event investigated and documented by the Catholic Church, an institution with every incentive to avoid diagnosing possession unless absolutely warranted. The Church's willingness to authorize and document the exorcism of Roland Doe gives the case weight that few others carry. On April 18, 1949, the 30th exorcism session takes place. Father Bowden performs the ritual with Father Halloran assisting, as they have done 29 times before, but something changes. Roland, in his own voice, begins to describe a vision. He sees St. Michael the Archangel, bright and terrible, commanding Satan to leave. The boy's body relaxes completely. The tension that has held him rigid for weeks drains away. The room, according to those present, smells suddenly of roses, a scent with no source, appearing and fading in moments. Roland opens his eyes. He is himself again. The boy remembers nothing of the preceding months. The scratching in walls, the moving objects, the voices and attacks, all of it is absent from his memory, as if those months belong to someone else. He returns to Maryland with his family. He completes his education. He lives a normal life, marriage, children, employment, untroubled by recurrence. His identity is never publicly confirmed. Those who know it protect it. Roland Doe becomes a pseudonym that outlasts the man, a placeholder for a boy who survived something that should have consumed him. In 1971, William Peter Blatty publishes The Exorcist, a novel directly inspired by the Roland Doe case. Blatty had read newspaper accounts of the exorcism while attending Georgetown University, and the story remained with him for decades. His novel changes details. The possessed boy becomes a girl, the location shifts, the timeline compresses, but the core phenomena come directly from the documented case. In 1973, William Friedkin directs the film adaptation, which becomes a cultural phenomenon. The Exorcist terrifies audiences not because it invents horrors, but because it draws from documented events. The words appearing on skin, the levitation, the voice changes, the attacks on clergy, all of these appear in the Jesuit diaries from 1949. The legacy of the Roland Doe case extends beyond entertainment. For the Catholic Church, it becomes a reference point in discussions of possession and exorcism protocols. For paranormal investigators like Ed and Lorraine Warren, it becomes the gold standard of documentation, a case that withstands scrutiny because it was investigated by institutions with reputations to protect, documented by educated men with no incentive to fabricate, and witnessed by multiple individuals who had nothing to gain from lying. Father Halloran's public testimony, given decades after the events when he had no need for attention or validation, provides the kind of first-hand clerical witness testimony that gives the case enduring credibility. The house in Cottage City no longer stands. The locations in St. Louis where the exorcism sessions took place are known to researchers but not marked publicly. Roland Doe, if he still lives, remains anonymous. But the documentation survives. The Jesuit diaries remain in archives, available to serious researchers. Father Halloran's interviews are preserved in recordings and transcripts. The case file stands as one of the most thoroughly documented instances of phenomena that defy natural explanation, not because it relies on sensational claims, but because it relies on institutional records, clerical testimony, and the willingness of the Catholic Church to acknowledge that something happened in 1949 that could not be explained by psychology, medicine, or coincidence. The scratching in the walls began in winter. By spring, it was over. A boy returned to himself. An entity, if the testimony is believed, was cast out. And the documentation of those months became the foundation for understanding that some events exist outside the boundaries of what modern rationality permits. If you found this case compelling, subscribe to Vanishing Roads for more documented paranormal investigations from around the world. This story was created with AI assistance based on documented case files. All events reference real investigations and reported incidents.